Hello. Hi, Rabbi Mullet. Uh, I'm kind of torn. There's a live stream by Ron Coleman and Steve Gosney, who I don't know who Steve Gosney is. And apparently the main channel is Good Logic, Lawgic. They did a New Year's party stream, and it's been going for a while. Oh, Alex Jones Network? Really? I didn't realize he was part of the Alex Jones. Anyway, I really like Ron Coleman. He's an Orthodox Jew. Apparently, Joe from Good Logic is an Orthodox Jew. So they have a stream going. Ron Coleman, you don't know Ron Coleman? He is an Orthodox Jew who is a lawyer. And yeah, he's a pretty active lawyer, and he's active on the Twitters, that is X, and he's very active in the Republican Party. I am a fan of both his legal, what do you call it? His legal acumen, would you call it? Acumen? His legal expertise, and also he seems like a nice guy, like a Heilig Ayid, as they say. I don't think most people in Israel celebrate what we refer to as the secular New Year explicitly. Ben mentioned people call it Sylvester. Actually, I guess I could look up Sylvester. Pope Sylvester. So apparently, Pope Sylvester, his Catholic feast day is the 31st of December, which is why in Israel the secular New Year is colloquially referred to as Sylvester. Pope Sylvester was also a rabid anti-Semite, and apparently he was very influential on Constantine and the First Council of Nicaea, where the Christians decided not to use the Jewish calendar. Rabbi Mullet says, New Year's is a big day there in the secular culture. Yeah, they call it Sylvester. So they call it Sylvester after Pope Sylvester. Here, if you guys want to see Pope Sylvester, there is Pope Sylvester. 14th century head reliquary. So he's apparently also the guy from the donation of Constantine. Yoav says nowadays is more Novi God. I have no idea what you're saying. What do you mean Novi God? I didn't realize there were dragons running around then. I didn't either. Is that what it says somewhere on this page? New Year's Eve is no fun for people who don't drink. Hello, Kirk. Happy New Year's. Hello, Risto. Thank you for the warm wishes. The wiki on Sylvester said that a legend claims that he slayed a dragon. Well, lots of legends claim lots of people slew dragons. I think I am going to make myself some tea. I will be back. Don't go anywhere. I now realize that it was a Polish-Russian rift. The Russian Novi God is the Polish Sylvester. Okay. I think there are people who translate certain things as dragons. Let's see. Avodah Zara 43A6. Tana Ramanan. Ezehu Tzurat Drakon. So there's this word drakon, which I'm guessing should mean dragons. Perish Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Kol sheyesh lo tzitzin bein parakav. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar explained it is any figure that has scales between its joints. Machve Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Asi motioned with his hands to depict scales. Bein pirkei tzavar, between the joints of the neck. Rabbi Amar Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina. Halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Hanina, says, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. I guess this is talking about figures of dragons, not dragons themselves. So, yeah, it's talking about figures of dragons. The usual translation of the Septuagint for tanin, which we oftentimes you say whales, is dragon's poison. This is all based on translations to the Greek. The Babylonians apparently talked about Tiamat as a dragon. Yeah, I think it's more of a Christian thing. I will be back. What kind of tea? Peppermint. Celestial Seasonings peppermint. Very whatchamacallit. Coffee with a bit of creamer is better than tea. You are a young man. Fraud! Hey, how you doing, Fraud? Long time no see. Fraud says tanin sometimes. If I know Fraud by now, his Hebrew is better than mine. If dragons exist, I wonder if they'd be kosher. Leviathan apparently is. More Hebrew, even on New Year's. Do y'all do anything else? Happy New Year, Mark. Tea is objectively way better than coffee. In Sylvester's case, dragon probably meant that pesky Jewish cow. Have you heard the joke of the conservative Jew rebuking a reform Jew for hearing a shofar on New Year's Eve during too early for a Muslim? That sounds like an Orthodox show. Can confirm tea better than coffee. Is there tannin in the tea? Very funny. Made it up myself. Won't trademark though. Very funny. Rabbi Mullet prefers coffee to tea. Chad Rabbi Mullet. I'm not sure Rabbi Mullet is hep with the Chadness. Yeah, I got the joke. I have to say, good coffee is good, and I especially like coffee flavored things. Like even chocolate covered coffee beans are really good. I do like those, but I very rarely drink coffee. I think Andrew left some coffee here. You should talk about H-1B visas. I did a video on that for my personal channel. It's up to 1.4K views already. It's nuts. Really? Huh. So my opinion on H-1B visas. First, I'll say that for a long time, as somebody who is an immigrant, I thought it was best for me not. I mean, I am an immigrant to the United States. I am incredibly thankful to the United States for granting me asylum and came here legally. All my family came here legally. Most of my family becomes very indignant at the implication that illegal immigration is somehow equivalent to legal immigration. I think the distinction needs to be made. I used to say, I really don't talk about immigration much because I kind of feel like I'm not an objective voice. I have to say that acculturation is a thing, and we need to keep that in mind. I think most of the debate, I hate the fact that I suspect pretty much all debates on the right to be people trying to find a way of sabotaging Trump. Do you believe for legal immigrants that there should be stronger vetting standards for things like IQ and competency? Frankly, my view is a very capitalist one. I think that Eric Weinstein did a very good analysis on immigration, which people have not paid attention to. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. This is from 2002. And I think if you're going to do it, the only real way to do it is just auction off visas. and people will pay for them if they want to. IQ is total BS. I don't think it's total BS. Competency is hard to measure. This is true. Let people in based on virtues and values, which is all that matters. H-1B is a loophole, which we don't need. Honestly, the numbers on H-1B supposedly are so small that it shouldn't matter. But there's something around 700,000 H-1B people here in the United States right now. That's a very large number. I prefer immigrant visas to temporary visas, like temporary student and temporary worker visas. I think if people want to come and join our society, that is very much different from letting people in thing. Yoav says, "Oh, the joy of being an Israeli engineer. Nobody that can fill my post will come here." I don't know for certain the statistic is true and it is possibly exaggerated, but I did see a link on X about the average IQ of Haiti being 67. Yeah, that's bullshit. No society could exist like that. Here, let's read the abstract of Eric's immigration paper. Peer-reviewed journal article, Migration for the Benefit of All Towards a New Paradigm for Economic Immigration. Eric Weinstein, International Labor Review, volume 141. I guess that's part 3 or something. Pages 225 to 252, 2002. Migrant worker programs, MWPs, offer the promise of increased productivity, lower consumer prices, cultural interchange, and higher living standards for workers coming from poorer countries. Unfortunately, these programs have regularly been bedeviled by various abuses and unintended consequences. Such failures have tended to mitigate popular support among native workers and citizens. This, in turn, has kept MWPs below the levels wanted by employers for maximal productivity. In this article, an argument is made for new market-based MWPs that seek to align the support and interest of native workers, employers, consumers, governments, and the interest of migrants. This is available online for free. Not a lot of people have viewed it. Let's see. Share this tab instead. I am sharing that tab instead. Can we read this? Okay. It is no exaggeration to say that migrant worker programs have the potential to better the lives of all they touch. Such initiatives can increase productivity, decrease costs to consumers, promote cultural interchange, increase corporate profits, thus keeping employers from relocating to low-wage economies, establish close relationships between rich and poor nations, facilitate foreign direct investment, and better the lives of workers from less fortunate economies. While few policy programs are ever universally popular, many initiatives offering far fewer potential benefits have achieved broad levels of public support. In view of this background, therefore, it is curious that temporary migrant worker programs in the world's leading economies have generally been kept small relative to the levels of interest expressed by both prospective migrants and host country employers. This interest is evident from the long queues of migrants seeking work visas and the employers' groups' campaigns for the expansion of visa programs, giving firms the option to search for employees overseas. Given the potential they hold, the continuing small size of MWPs observed in the world's industrialized economies requires some explanation. Despite their potential, however, it must be admitted that MWPs are often more resented than loved by the nationals of the receiving countries. Ironically, whereas those migrant workers' initiatives are often portrayed by their proponents as bettering society as a whole, they can prove difficult to sell because of their unpopularity with a majority of the host country nationals they are supposed to benefit economically. As most of the world's wealthier nations are governed by some form of representative democracy, voter discomfort with migrant labor initiatives often translates into MWPs of modest or small size, which are highly concentrated in a few targeted sectors of the host economy. This purportedly irrational self-defeating obstructionism directed towards MWPs on the part of natives is often explained by the argument that the political polarization surrounding the topic of economic migrants is at its essence a non-economic reaction to the migrants themselves. From this perspective, widespread xenophobia is often suspected and viewed as an irrational non-economic force of sufficient strength to cause host country natives to rally against their own self-interest. In fact, while simple bigotry is common enough throughout the industrialized world, such irrational opposition may have been overemphasized as an explanation by those impatient to reap the benefits that migrant labor offers. Strong hint that xenophobia is unlikely to be at the root of the opposition is that throughout labor history, individuals have shown great willingness to put aside their own deep-seated personal prejudices when their self-interest has come into play. One need look no further than the slave trade, in which the slavers' indifferent greed brought migrants forcibly across borders to nations as different as Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. In fact, what can be gleaned empirically from the history of migrant labor is that xenophiles and xenophobes may be virtually indistinguishable in their enthusiasm for welcoming migrants when doing so advances their self-interest. As tolerance of slave labor continues to shrink in modern labor markets, the role of self-interest can now be seen in a more optimistic and positive light. Most employers view the hiring of migrants as a tool which can be counted upon to improve profit margins. Accordingly, one finds few, if any, employers who object to being given the freedom to recruit workers from abroad. Thus, unless xenophobia selectively afflicts workers and spares employers, such a division is much more likely to be a result of divergent economic interests. Thus, if it can be assumed that native workers are intrinsically no more nor less benighted, he misspelled benighted, than native employers, it is probably also safe to assume that the best way of combating resistance to migrants is to ensure that MWPs are in the clear self-interest of all host country nationals. Though the sheer number of problems associated with MWPs can seem daunting at first, a review of migration programs in various national contexts indicates that three main features of MWPs may be acting as wellsprings for these difficulties. In the first instance, the tethering of migrants to employer sponsors creates a non-market system with a host of inefficiencies. I very much agree with this, and I dislike it. As well as the potential for human rights violations. Yes, true, problem. Second, naively opening markets to migrants from lower income countries can act as a kind of tax, redistributing native income away from workers and towards employers. Again, yes, problem. I agree. Of course, it can be argued that any proposed redistribution is intrinsically neither good nor bad, yet such transfers can make it nearly impossible to reach a broad consensus on many important migration issues within the host country electorate. Rationality indicates that proposals which threaten to harm the majority of individuals, are unlikely to be approved by a self-interested electorate. Supporting native wages can make inroads with host country workers, but does so by introducing inefficiencies which then threaten to erase the benefits that MWPs bring. Lastly, it must be appreciated that bringing the migrant workers incurs costs which have generally not been accurately incorporated into the fees paid by employers and entrants. Externalities of MWPs may include such factors as administrative costs, security considerations, impact on the environment, or use of social services. Unsurprisingly, low fees which fail to accurately incorporate sizable potential costs do little to encourage public confidence in these already controversial programs. One manifestation of this concern is that public pressure to limit the impact of migration on the receiving country often results in the imposition of artificial quotas to control migrant impact. The inherent inefficiencies of such exogenous bureaucratic limits can be expected to harm employers, limit productivity, and keep migrants from contributing maximally to host country welfare. Some proponents of MWPs have suggested that current programs can be adjusted to respond to these difficulties. Unfortunately, there is little in either practice or theory to suggest that small alterations will result in the desired outcomes. Ironically, many of the standard models for MWPs are revealed under scrutiny to be pitted against the very market forces they were expected to embrace. This article argues that what is needed is not another variation on existing themes, but rather a fundamental restructuring of MWPs so that they embrace truly market-based solutions. This new paradigm can provide native employers with more migrants with more freedom, and native workers with a chance to feel secure while sharing in the good fortune that migrants can bring. If one had the luxury of implementing a market solution of the kind proposed here in a world of pure economic theory, the solution might have a naturally preferred structure. In the real world of policy, account must be taken of the quality of the host nation's institutions, the distance from perfect markets, and other details peculiar to local conditions. It is therefore impossible to create a one-size-fits-all guide for operationalizing the basic policy model put forward here. First, second, and third best solutions are therefore proposed in an attempt to indicate how implementation might vary in practice. Is anybody actually interested in this stuff? Well, a bunch of you are listening. Should I continue reading? I am going to continue reading. Problems and challenges facing current temporary MWPs. Given the wide variety of nations hosting temporary migrant workers, it is difficult to generalize about the state of current MWPs. Different national experiences reveal a range of approaches to importing labor, frustrating any simple model of a canonical MWP. However, if the approaches are varied, the problems created by these programs are somewhat less so, as seemingly different programs share a number of core problems. In fact, this article will argue that three general features of MWPs give rise to much of the controversy. To begin with, programs requiring employers to directly sponsor their foreign employees end up tethering migrants to their employer sponsors. This creates a first set of problems, as migrant-sponsored tethering creates a significant risk of both market failure and rights abuse. Second, there are the consequences of wage depression. Though it is infrequently trumpeted by the architects of MWPs, salary depression must be a goal of generic MWPs if the programs are to succeed in raising total native income. Nevertheless, depressing native wages creates a number of complications, ranging from alienation of the electorate to phenomena of ghettoization and unhealthy level of host country dependence on external labor. Lastly, there are the administrative costs and other externalities encountered in absorbing foreign nationals. When revenue collected proves insufficient to administer and supervise the presence of migrants, the quality of the hosting experience can be greatly diminished. Similarly, there are generally externalities, both positive and negative, that are not explicitly accounted for in MWP revenue structures. If, for example, a country values the vibrancy of a migrant worker presence, which incidentally brings greater cultural diversity, richness, and texture to the host society, then it is perfectly reasonable that fees should be lowered to take account of these possible externalities. However, any direct increase in population also involves negative effects and risks, which cannot be completely prevented by improvements in the program's administration. The following section examines the range of consequences that can be traced to these three features. Consequences of direct sponsorship. In many MWPs, the host country employer sponsors the individual migrant seeking work abroad. This sponsorship generally entails several related responsibilities, such as visa fees, legal arrangements, repatriation guarantees, or employers' legal liability for the actions of the sponsored workers. Given the costs and risks associated with direct employer sponsorships, it is both inequitable and politically infeasible to ask host country employers to tolerate free job searches by employees who they have brought into the country at considerable expense. As a result, sponsored migrants are often closely tethered to their host country employer sponsors and are therefore not free to search for alternative employment opportunities in the host country. This has been seen to create a set of challenges for MWPs, the three most important of which are discussed below. Market inefficiencies. Migrant workers are supposed to increase host country productivity by making the labor market more efficient. According to standard reasoning, when they are permitted to seek their maximum asking price across borders, workers can be expected to be employed where they are most useful. The gains derived from migrants' freedom to respond to wage signals and terms of employment are central to the economic argument in favor of transnational job search. Indeed, it is often given as the raison d'etre, reason for existing, for the introduction of MWPs. If migrants are not given the freedom to change employers within the host country, then this efficiency argument loses much of its appeal. The act of tethering migrants prevents their self-interest from achieving the efficiency that MWPs are created to provide. In short, if one accepts the simple economic argument for lowering international barriers to freedom of movement, then mutatis mutandis, everything being the same, one accepts the same argument for intranational job search within the sector to which the migrant worker was admitted. Rights abuse arising from quasi-ownership. Perhaps the most obvious risk arising from MWPs is that they place migrants in employment situations where they can be vulnerable to exploitation by unscrupulous employers. This risk must be faced up to at some level, for since migrants are cut off from their own country's support structures, it is almost inevitable that they experience losses in voting rights, decreased language facility, and unfamiliarity with host country infrastructure. Thus, it is often difficult for them to seek redress for reasonable grievances against their employers, should such problems arise. When this occurs, the most obvious remedy is for the worker to leave the employer in search of better employment elsewhere. But when migrant workers are tethered to sponsors, they lose the option of voting with their feet. It has proved quite difficult to construct an adequate regulatory system to substitute for freedom of movement within the labor market. Preferences for migrants undercutting of natives. When migrant and native workers of comparable value to an employer are asked to compete, it is to be expected that the employer will take the applicant who costs him less or her less. If, however, the respective terms of employment of the native and the migrant worker differ considerably, the employer may develop a preference between otherwise equal candidates. If migrant workers are not permitted to seek alternative work in the host country, then their company loyalty is reduced to a matter of law and regulation. In such circumstances, employers know that they will not have to earn migrant worker loyalty with the expenditure of resources that would be needed in the case of native workers. Thus, it is to be expected that in systems tethering migrant workers to their employer sponsors, some migrants will outcompete natives of comparable or greater value simply by virtue of the terms of employment set by the MWP. Since this is precipitated by a rational market response on the part of native employers, this consequence must be seen as natural, if unfortunate, byproduct of direct migrant sponsorships. The immigration surplus and the consequences of wage depression. Perhaps the single most uncomfortable fact about MWPs is that their ability to benefit the host economy hinges on their ability to lower wages in the host economy. The main benefit of MWPs, presumed by economic theorists, is that they allow employers to increase profits and decrease prices specifically by lowering labor costs in those occupations under recruitment from abroad. As Borjas indicated in a now classic paper, ironically, even though the debate over immigration policy views the possibility that immigrants lower the wage of native workers as a harmful consequence of immigration, the economic benefits from immigration arise only when immigrants do lower the wage of native workers. In economic theory, it is nearly always presumed that increases in the supply of a commodity will lead to decline in its price when that commodity is labor and the price is its wage. It must be assumed the additional workers, whether native or foreign, will decrease the salary of existing workers. For our purposes, the pivotal point of the naive migration model proposed by Borjas are the principles involved rather than the specific model parameters, as the theory is highly stylized for didactic purposes. Discussion of the specifics of the Borjas theory in the context of the model advanced by this article is therefore deferred to the appendix, Immigration Surpluses with and without Native Transfer of Wealth, where the two models are explained graphically and contrasted. The focus here is on the main implications, which include the following. In the absence of negative externalities, migration can be expected to provide a net economic benefit to the host country's economy. The redistribution of native income, which accompanies an unstructured migration program, is likely to dominate a much smaller productivity benefit. Further, if the ownership of capital is concentrated, then the benefits of migration to natives will be correspondingly concentrated. Native workers in the sector concerned may experience none of the economic benefits of the migration program. In fact, in the absence of any compensation measures, they may experience a substantial loss of income, as the benefit to the host society stems from the ability to lower wages while simultaneously increasing the number of workers employed. This implies that whether or not migration is seen as having a positive or negative effect on the host society hinges on the choice of measure used to indicate host country welfare. In effect, the Borjas model argues that the host country's welfare will be increased if mean income is used as the gauge of national well-being. However, should a related statistic, such as median income, be used, the program could well be expected to decrease national well-being, assuming that workers outnumber capitalists, which obviously is true. Given these implications, Borjas's argument lends support to the idea that views on migration programs divide over the redistribution of native income rather than over resistance to the migrants themselves. The relatively small size of the immigration surplus, particularly when compared to the very large wealth transfers caused by immigration, probably explains why the debate over immigration policy has usually focused on the potentially harmful labor market impacts rather than on the overall increase in native income. In other words, the debate stresses the distributional issues, the transfer of wealth away from workers rather than the efficiency gains, the positive immigration surplus. If the social welfare function depends on both efficiency gains and the distributional impact of immigration, the slight benefits arising from the immigration surplus may well be outweighed by the substantial wealth redistribution that takes place, particularly since the redistribution goes from workers to owners of capital or other users of immigrant services. Whether or not a small productivity gain justifies a large transfer of wealth does not come within the purview of this article. However, even if one argues that such a transfer is desirable, one should recognize that the redistribution of income is the cause of several well-known problems. I mean, I hope it's clear what he's saying here, and unfortunately, too often it is not. Yoav says, build your walls if you so desire before discussing replacing the locks on your gates. That is a wise thing to say. Don says, lol, Jacob translating the one language other than English I know a bit of. Yeah, raisins d'etre. Isn't it raison d'etre? I believe it's raison d'etre. But what do I know? That is poor economics. Increasing productivity without touching salaries is the original principle and would work fine economically has been done. I have no idea what you're saying. Don says, it's only 8:48 and some rascally neighbors are already starting up with the fireworks. Let the fun begin. And Don says, don't listen to Mark. Don't worry. There's no danger of that. Okay. Back to the thing. Okay. Ghettoization. It is common for MWPs to be targeted on particular occupations or sub-occupations where employers complain of difficulties in attracting sufficient numbers of natives. When this occurs, the effect of wage depression must be expected to be occupation specific. It is thus a near certainty that if MWPs target occupations already failing to attract native workers, those occupations will become even less attractive to native workers, as wage growth is depressed relative to non-target sectors. Since the occupations recruiting migrant workers may provide one of the few portals into the host economy, migrants may conversely be expected to flock to these entry occupations even in their eventual, if their eventual goal is to move on to non-targeted occupations after spending some time in the host country. These two effects, when combined, lead to the phenomenon of native flight or ghettoization. This is generally seen as a problem for nations which are striving for a migrant presence to complement, not displace native workers. Who will pick your strawberries is a really horrible argument that is made by people who are evil or stupid. I tend to try to think that they're just stupid. Long-term native shortages. As discussed above, wage depression in targeted occupations can set up a positive feedback loop. As more migrants move into a particular field, which is failing to attract native workers, wages will fall increasingly short of competitive offerings, causing an acceleration of native flight towards non-targeted fields. This curious cycle is sometimes seen as a native worker shortage, though the term seems particularly ill-suited to describe a problem experienced by employers, which is ultimately self-inflicted. In fact, what may start as a simple temporary spot shortage of trained native workers can be rendered rather more permanent by attempts at a quick fix solution through migrant labor. Any program which imports migrants into a sector whose employers are complaining of insufficient trained natives can be expected to exacerbate rather than alleviate its native shortage. Rather than increasing incentives to entice new workers to seek training in order to fill the vacancies, visas are likely to be used to avoid the necessary market response. Even if visa fees are put towards training programs to bring more native workers into the sector, those already there may respond by fleeing the sector even faster, leading to a greater spot shortage. I can't overemphasize this enough. Anyway, administrative and social considerations, costs, and risks. Because the presence of migrant workers entails a range of different impacts, the administration of an MWP creates numerous costs, benefits, and risks, and raises related issues which are incidental to the purpose of the program. Creating a proper welcoming environment for migrant workers means not only ensuring that the net impact created by the migrant program does not exceed the revenue it generates, i.e., taxes and fees paid by migrant workers and employers, but also that existing social contracts between natives are not reordered without their consent and appropriate compensation. If the fees paid by employers and migrants are set at an appropriate level, the full expected cost of the migrants' presence will be compensated by payments within the program. Setting fees too high or too low leads to a suboptimal number of migrants at a level below or above the carrying capacity, which would most benefit the host society. However, given that employers are particularly keen to keep fees low during the design of MWPs, the most likely result is that fees are not high enough to meet the full cost of hosting migrant workers. In such a situation, the program's inability to cover its costs will tend to make it even more vulnerable to criticism. From time to time, efforts are made to recover the direct cost of processing migrants. This is necessary because the income tax schedule applicable to host country nationals cannot simply be extended to apply to migrants in order to defray expenses, as the costs of running the MWP are truly migrant specific. Moreover, migrants have very varied impacts on important aspects of society in their host countries, e.g., on national security, cultural diversity, local environmental issues, and the use of public services. Unfortunately, because these indirect effects of migration are extremely complex, e.g., nonlinear impacts on the environment, few MWPs have tried to set revenue schedules by really attempting to total the full extent of these impacts. Thus, the resources needed to lessen the negative effects of migration on host countries are frequently not provided by the program itself. This means either that resources are drawn away from other programs in order to subsidize MWPs, or that there are insufficient resources to make the migrant presence a clear net benefit to the host society. Even when adequate revenue is generated to offset the impact of the MWP, it must be recognized that natives are involved in pre-existing social contracts which can become inadvertently restructured by the introduction of migrants. In particular, the rights of citizens to preferential access to their own labor market are generally woven into the fabric of a social contract which includes numerous counterbalancing responsibilities. It is thus critical to recognize that native workers are entitled to consultation, consent, and compensation if social contracts are to be rewritten rather than abrogated. Why does he have to speak in code? Because we can't say things out loud because we're not adults. Direct costs of administrating an MWP, like any government program, an MWP entails a number of direct costs which should be paid for out of revenue generated by the program-related fees, and migrant income taxes. Many of the resources needed to run such a program present no particular costing difficulties beyond what is needed by any other government program incurring expenses while processing applications and issuing documents. If anything distinguishes MWPs in this regard, it is likely to be the unusual infrastructure needed to fund proper monitoring and control of employers, migrants, and workplaces to ensure that the program is functioning as intended. However, inadequate supervision and administration often results from an initial failure to incorporate adequate funding for program enforcement into the MWP revenue structure. Two examples illustrate this point. One well-known problem associated with MWPs is that workers who enter the host country legally can drift into an irregular status when the initial visa fees do not fully cover the monitoring and enforcement costs needed to ensure the migrants do not violate the terms of their admission. MWPs can quickly lose the ability to ensure that they remain in status. In such cases, migrants drift out of the control of the MWP, exposing the program to problems less direct and more costly than the original monitoring costs. A second example concerns repatriation, where transportation costs can be particularly important. When migrants come from distant countries, it is important to plan ahead for possible repatriation expenses, as the cost of a migrant worker's return home can fall to the state. If there is a possibility that the cost of a return will not be borne by the employer or the migrant worker, it is important to ensure that funds are collected at the time of admission, if the state is not to be placed in a needless blind. Though it may be objected that such fees can dampen enthusiasm for hiring workers from abroad, they are critical to ensuring that the MWP is administered responsibly in a self-funding fashion so that it is respected as a net contributor to the economic engine of the host nation. In short, fair fees may be viewed as less discouraging than the low fixed quotas which may be imposed to limit the consequences of poor administration. Indirect costs and externalities associated with MWPs. Both critics and proponents of MWPs agree that migrant workers have an impact on various aspects of the host society. If an MWP is to provide an unambiguous benefit, it must do more than simply tally direct costs in order to anticipate which negative impacts can be reasonably prevented while compensating host country nationals for the unavoidable losses involved. Additionally, if migrants are viewed as making a positive social contribution, that positive externality must be subtracted from fees as a kind of a negative cost, which reflects the migrants' contribution to host society diversity. When migrants pay income and other taxes to their host countries, many of the indirect costs of hosting are defrayed by simply considering migrants as if they were additional tax-paying nationals. Such costs, therefore, require no special consideration. In many situations, however, the expansion of an MWP can entail costs which are not properly dealt with by general taxes. A few important examples which serve to illustrate the point are infrastructure, environmental, and security issues. As regards infrastructure, e.g. hospitals, housing, roads, schools, fire department, etc., tax revenue calibrated only for the needs of the host country nationals can prove insufficient to defray the impact of migrants fully. He's not mentioning Medicare and Social Security, mostly because we kind of expect someone to come here at 20, work until 60, and then get kicked out, which is just unconscionable in a society that's not horrible. But I think too many people contemplate precisely that, but whatever. For example, when an MWP expands in a society whose infrastructure is functioning either at or near capacity, There may be a need for new public expenditure projects to ensure the basic social institutions are not overburdened. Failure to recover such considerable costs can leave the host society's infrastructure overtaxed if the migrant worker population is not kept small. If additional individuals present a nonlinear impact on the quality of the environment, additional fees may be needed to ensure that natural resources are not unduly strained or that the host society is properly compensated. Viewed on a case-by-case basis, it may seem awkward to ask how many extra gallons of fresh water a single migrant requires or how that migrant changes the population density, since it is impossible to detect the migrant's presence from the resource use of one individual. It is thus tempting to set the cost of such a nebulous impact to zero. When calculated for large numbers of migrants, however, these issues can become more important, and failing to address them with adequate resources can be a source of friction when programs grow large. Failure to provide adequate revenue in these areas can lead to quite general suspicions that migrants are somehow at fault for host society ills, when the true culprit is actually poor planning. In the case of security, the risk posed by migrants and natives are usually somewhat dissimilar. To be sure, like most natives, most individual migrants generally have a negligible impact, if any, on the security climate of in the host country. Imposing a security surcharge on the admission of such law-abiding individuals can seem quite absurd when considered on a case-by-case basis. Nevertheless, when even a tiny minority of migrants has posed a genuine threat to the security environment in their host country, greater than that presented by natives, the risks have shown themselves to be potentially quite serious. Thus, since the host country has no sure way of initially distinguishing the unwanted minority from the desirable majority of the migrants, a diffuse security fee must be incorporated to cover the concentrated costs and risks posed by that minority until such time as it can be identified, controlled, and removed. Curiously, many programs do not make a real attempt to quantify this impact. When doing so, can provide the funds needed to make the migrant presence as safe and beneficial as possible to the host population. He's also not talking about the exporting of technology to China, that type of thing, whatever. In summary, a program that makes clear its estimates of these impacts will be well positioned to explain its funding needs. A program that concentrates only on general migrant benefit and direct program costs leaves itself open to potentially serious allegations of negligence in a variety of important spheres. Visa trading on black markets. MWPs are often set up to help particular employers with respect to specific complaints. However, when the working papers of a migrant are more valuable to a second employer than the employee is to the original sponsor, there is a temptation to sell the migrants' work authorization papers to a higher bidder. Alternatively, the migrant may wish to buy back his or her obligations to the initial employer in order to seek work elsewhere in the host country's economy. These and other considerations can lead to a black market trading in visas. Such trading in documents is extremely difficult to monitor as it necessarily occurs in an informal, unregulated environment. In addition to circumventing the letter of the initial applications to bring in migrant workers, these markets in paperwork can drift perilously close to markets in the workers themselves. Naturally, such markets must be prevented. A new paradigm for MWPs. The previous section highlighted some of the problems encountered by MWPs. A major challenge for MWPs is to find solutions to these many problems and thus to foster wider public enthusiasm in the host country population for the presence of contributing foreign workers. All too often, however, this has been approached by policymakers and analysts working problem by problem in an effort to patch up existing MWPs. As the remedies themselves run the risk of introducing still more unexpected consequences, it is perhaps unsurprising that the success of such efforts has been limited at best. It is argued here that rather than addressing each problem individually, that it needs what is needed is fundamental structural reform of current MWPs. Though the stated intention of many current MWPs is to provide market solutions to boost productivity, these programs have proved strikingly ambivalent about the very market forces that they set out to embrace, e.g., wage depression, native flight to untargeted occupations, economic freedom of movement for migrants, etc. As a result of this basic equivocation, current MWPs have adopted a seemingly inconsistent combination of market and non-market objectives, which have thus far proved resistant to reconciliation. The perspective explored in this article is that such failures are the result not of over-marketization, but of inadequate marketization. By proposing a truly market-based solution, this article attempts to show that it should be possible to create an efficiently functioning MWP while directly addressing the cause of the three sets of problems described. I have to say that I think in a very real sense, he's making a modest proposal, because the people who oppose this proposal show you what their real intention is, which this would no longer fulfill. The paradigm described here may have several possible implementations. The basic idea, however, is to move away from a system of sponsored work visas to one which openly embraces the immigration surplus identified by Borjas. This section shows what market considerations naturally lead to a search for a new kind of MWP based on a self-funding market system for the licensing of tradable work permits, to be described in the subsequent subsections. Such systems of licensed tradable work permits will be referred to as LTWPs. Before putting forward the mechanism of constituting an LTWP, some of the major differences in orientation between LTWPs and the ordinary MWPs under discussion are examined. Adopting an LTWP means the arbitrary employer quotas for hiring migrants are abolished, and that the total number of migrants set by the market does not exceed the hosting capacity of the country concerned. In such a self-funding system, employers are free to follow market signals in their quest to boost productivity and control wage pressures. For the first time, the interests of workers and citizens are aligned with those of employers, since total program revenue in the form of permit fees and migrant income taxes is more than sufficient to defray the costs, both the concentrated costs of a wage loss to workers and the costs of diffuse societal impact to host country nationals. Moreover, migrants benefit substantially, as the tradability of permits guarantees their right to flee abusive or unsatisfactory employment, and they receive equal wages for equal work. It should be noted that though shifting the goal of an MWP to an LTWP system represents a critical change in orientation, it is really the first of two major challenges which must be met for a well-functioning migrant labor force to emerge. Once the necessity of structural reform is accepted, the remaining difficulty is to find a workable way of implementing the LTWP concept. Though the principal purpose of this article is to explain the need for a new theory of MWPs, one strategy for finding an optimal practical implementation will be discussed. As is common when a preferred benchmark model exists, a standard approach is to start with the benchmark case and to attenuate it in stages until it reaches a form that can be practically implemented in the context of established national institutions. For the purpose of illustration, one such series will be discussed, though presumably there are others. Restructuring MWP's core reforms. Though there are many ways of implementing reforms, we will argue here that current MWPs must be structurally altered in three critical to achieve an unequivocal benefit for both natives and migrant workers. All the means of implementation considered in the section on implementing the essential reforms are effectively different schemes for accomplishing the same structural reforms discussed below. Untethering. Reform 1. Migrant workers must be permitted freedom of movement within the admitting sector of the host labor market by shifting employer outlays away from direct visa sponsorships towards a system of tradable work permits. Hey, how you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. I saw that you were on and figured I'd stop in, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How you doing?
Got a bit of a head cold, but I'll survive.
A head cold?
Yeah, got it over Christmas.
It's been remarkably cold here in Los Angeles. It's been like down in the 50s.
Ouch.
Yeah.
It's actually been surprisingly warm here in Idaho, so.
It is currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, that's pretty cold as far as it gets around here.
Oh, I know. I grew up there, so.
Aha, yes, I remember you did.
So, yeah, we have yet to get snow here in Idaho, so.
It's almost January.
I know.
Well, it is what it is. Climate change. It must be climate change.
Yes.
What's up?
Oh, I was going to go watch your video that you were talking earlier with, I think it was Yosef, about Romans 7? The pregame?
Yeah, yesterday we tried to do kind of a preparation thing because I mean, I don't know what Father Stephen is preparing. He wants to take us through the Greek because he believes that it was mistranslated by Protestants to try to make a Protestant point, which is not what Paul meant.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I started watching it earlier on my phone, but for some reason, when I was trying to adjust the volume, it kept jumping in time, and when I tried to get back, I couldn't find where I was at. So I was like, I'll jump on later when I can use my laptop. And started to that, then I saw you online, so I gotta jump in and say, hey.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people watching. There's like 15 people watching. But nobody was jumping on, so I was just reading from an article Eric wrote 22 years ago.
Eric who?
Weinstein.
Oh, okay. Was that the article about the work visas?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, Mark Lefebvre was asking about H-1Bs. And I generally think Eric is right to bring up the things that he brings up, although I'm not sure everybody realizes what he's saying. The fact is our immigration policies create wealth transfers up, which, like, why people pretend that they don't is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Problem is that anybody that can find a way to get ahead, they figure out a way to game whatever system you put in place. Seems to be our human nature.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to? I mean, it's
Trying to finish my master's degree in social work. Trying to finish my substance abuse stuff. This time of year is always kind of busy for insurance because everybody's trying to renew for the new year. Yeah, and then same old, same old. I mean, lots of real life Jordan Peterson sphere stuff. So I went out to Joshua Tree because Jason was performing in a band there, and I got to meet him for the first time with his fiance. I flew out recently to Minneapolis for Garth's wedding, and other people have been visiting Los Angeles and stuff. So yeah, doing offline Jordan Peterson sphere stuff.
when were you in Minneapolis?
It was like a month ago now, right? When was the wedding? How long ago was the wedding? Let me see when I flew out there. I flew out November 9th.
Okay.
Yeah, November 8th was the wedding.
I was there about 2 weeks later.
Missed me by that much.
Yeah, I was had a layover in Minneapolis. So
What were you doing in Minneapolis?
I had a business trip in Wisconsin near
Aha.
Green Bay,
Aha. Yeah.
and so they flew me to Minneapolis, and then Minneapolis to Seattle, back to Boise.
Okay. Not a lot of direct flights to Boise, I'm guessing.
I guess not. I'm not. I was kind of surprised by that. At least, like when I actually went out there, they flew me down to Georgia, then back up to Wisconsin.
How large is Boise?
It's a pretty. I mean, it's not like as big as say like Denver or even Seattle for that matter.
And 35,000 people. The metro population is 765,000, 75th in the United States.
Yeah. And so here's a question for you, since we got on the very topic of, as humans, we tend to find ways to game the system. I think it's been gnawing at me recently, or not recently, but I guess for several years. There's this big push to do term limits. And I'm wondering, does that really solve anything, or does it just push it up sort of?
Oh, term limits makes the deep state just worse and worse and worse. It really does. We've had term limits in California. It just makes the situation worse. I am a fan of age limits. I think, like, if at the age of 80, you should not be standing for election. Like, once you're 80, yeah, that's too much.
Right. But I think that's more just a symptom of the fact that, the deep state's the one that's, in control, and you're a Manchurian candidate anyways at that point.
Well, I mean, look, there are benefits to having seniority and having people who've been there a long time. And frankly, I think that's fine if somebody gets there at 35 and they're still there at 75. Like, they've been in Congress for 40 years. That's not as bad to me as somebody somebody who's like, hello, Andrew.
What's poppin', Jacob?
How
Who's this kid? Hello?
Is that to me, Andrew?
Yeah, huh?
This is Timothy. We met. We were at.
I think that's why he was calling you a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, have you been in the meantime, huh?
Work and family.
Mm-hmm.
How's Indiana, Andrew?
You know, it's big chillin', man. It's huge chillin', actually.
Huge chillin'.
Uh-huh. The cousins were driving me a little bit nuts. Oh my gosh, did I ruin this? I hope not. Yeah, the cousins were like, they're kind of driving me nuts. They're all younger than me, a little substantially. But you know, like, it's cool to see him and all that jazz. And then, you know, the adults act all nonchalant. Well, half of them act nonchalant, and the other half are like, "Oh my gosh, you know, it's been so long. The last time I saw you, you were like, yay, hi," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, Aunt Missy. You don't have to worry about me so much, right? All that jazz."
I'm 21 years old, 7'5".
Yep. Yep. But you know, it's been cool. There's been good food, so I'm happy.
Grandmothers will do that.
Uh-huh.
Did you move to Indiana there, Andrew, or are you just out for visiting for the holidays?
Yeah, visiting for the holidays. Turns out there's a holiday on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day or something. Like, I don't know what that's about, you know? Like, I think this is spiritual warfare against New Year's.
What's the holiday?
Some something about Mary. I don't know. The service was like 1 hour and they didn't talk much about it.
This was at a Coptic church?
No, this was at a Catholic one. But the cops, they sent me an email about how New Year's Eve celebrations are sinful and we shouldn't act drunkenly and throw wild parties, which I thought was a little out of line, but
I mean, they're right. You shouldn't act wildly. For Catholics, New Year's Day isn't just the first day of the New Year. It's a day of holy obligation. January 1st marks the solemnity of Mary, a day of that honors the role of Mary as, I won't even say that, according to the liturgical calendar.
Yeah, it's actually also the middle section of the 12 Days of Christmas. So it's actually part of that's where the song 12 Days of Christmas comes from. It's actually from all the feasts from the Catholic Church that follow December 25th to January 5th.
You know, it wasn't celebrating anything in particular. I thought it was cooked up by the Catholics to make sure people don't have any fun, but
it's actually a pretty old one.
Oh, haha. I caught you both. It is, in fact, apparently, according to the Eastern Orthodox churches, today, the Feast of the Circumcision of Christ is a Christian celebration of the circumcision of Jesus in accordance with Jewish tradition 8 days, according to the Semitic and Southern European calculations of intervals of days after his birth, the occasion on which the child was formally given his name. The feast appears on January 1st in the liturgical calendar of Eastern Orthodox churches, all Lutheran churches, and some churches of the Anglican Communion. In the general Roman calendar, first 1 January feast, which from 1568 to 1960 was called the Circumcision of the Lord, and the Octave of the Nativity. Octave. Okay. Is now the Solemnity of Mary, and I won't even say that word, and the Octave Day of the Nativity of the Lord. In Western Christianity, the feast of the naming and circumcision of Jesus Christ marks the 8th day, Octave Day of Christmastide.
That's according to the calendar of the heretics, Jacob.
The feast is celebrated with an all-night vigil beginning on the evening of December 31st. The hymns of the feast are combined with those of Saint Basil the Great. What? Okay, I am going to have to ask all of the guys on the Eastern Orthodox thing. Hey, how many of you are vigiling tonight? Apparently 0 of them.
I'm telling you, it's spiritual warfare. The Catholics don't want us to have a good time.
All night vigil. So there you go. There you go.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Guess you're not going to sleep now, Tim, are ya?
Guess not.
So much attention to the peepsy of one little baby. Kind of weird. I don't know what to tell ya. It's your religion, not mine. That's funny though. I just looked up to see when it was because I knew it was 8 days after Christmas, but yeah, that's funny. So there you go. You learn something new every day.
Yes. And we find out how that other heathen is. So.
What are we talking about?
Nothing in particular. I was actually probably going to end the stream soon, although a bunch of people are watching.
Because of me, man. What can I say?
There's 16 people watching.
I'm just that popular. When I joined in, it was 15.
Probably, yeah. My friends and I, after high school, we started having a New Year's party, and every year we had the New Year's party, and it became really big. It was a huge party. Lots of people came, and then people started getting married and having kids. Yeah, it says that on X, but it's I don't trust those numbers. That's what it says on X. I think that's the number of views, not the number of viewers. But yeah. What was I saying? But people started having kids and babies and getting older, and so I think it was with COVID that we ultimately went completely, or we might have even gone completely online before COVID, but COVID really pushed it over the edge. So now we do it online, and they're starting right now, and my friends are waiting for me.
Dun dun dun.
Andrew, you totally missed the reading of an entire academic paper by Eric Weinstein. I bet you feel bad now.
Oh no. Isn't he the guy that does like evolution stuff?
No, that's his brother, Brett.
Okay.
This academic paper was actually on the economics of immigration.
That's cool.
Yeah. Steven says, I just wanted to see if Andrew was brushing teeth or eating cereal. He is doing neither currently.
No, I can't like raid my grandparents' pantry. That'd be uncool of me. I'd be labeled the uncool grandchild.
How many grandchildren do they have?
You see, I really don't want to get this wrong. 7? No, 9.
Do I know how many grandchildren? So on my dad's side, 3, 5, 8, 10. And then on my mom's side, it would be 3, and then 5, 7. No, 5. Yeah, 7, and then 9. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, so 9 on one side, 10 on the other.
That's cool.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty small, considering how many kids they actually had themselves. Like their kids all had 2 or 3. Orthodox families, like especially Haredi families, like
Yep, I get you.
You end up with definitely dozens. I asked one of my rabbis, his wife, like, how many grandkids do you have now? And she said, I really don't know. By now, like the numbers are pretty high.
Yeah, I think 4 is a cool number. Like that's how many kids one of my aunts has. And like they're pretty cool. They kind of like they halfway self-govern, and the adults just kind of have to like, give it that extra push, that extra level of authority. And also like pay all the bills and whatnot, and drive everyone everywhere and all that jazz. So
well, until the oldest starts driving.
Yeah.
But I heard somebody say when you move from 2 to 3, you move from one-on-one defense to zone defense, and I just thought that was so hilarious.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I can attest to that. I'm also told that you don't go pro until you have 4 or more. So
I definitely believe 4 is the minimum number of children anyone should have. Yeah. Speaking as someone who obviously has 0 children.
Yeah, Jacob, you got to work on that.
Too late. I'm old. I'm too old. If I were to have a kid now, when my kid was 12, I would be like 60. What kind of poor 12-year-old would have a 60-year-old dad?
No.
Yeah.
I just watched the Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Have you ever read?
No, I didn't read it at all. I'm one of those guys, I watch the movie, then I don't need to read the book, right? The movie's
Thur-
probably so much better anyway.
Thurber is actually very funny.
Mm.
I know when I was in school we had to read Thurber, but I don't think they read Thurber as much anymore.
Mm. You see, I don't even know who that is.
Probably the author of the book.
Uh-huh. Apparently we're reading this book called like Tortilla Flat in book club. I don't know. I haven't even bought the book yet.
Which book club?
The Trey, Elijah, David Walker book club.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something about tortillas.
Elijah definitely reads too many books.
Yeah, I kind of get that vibe from him.
Elijah definitely reads too many books.
Yeah.
So what? Since I didn't get a chance to watch all the way through, what did you and Joseph kind of? Were to summarize the video that you did 2 nights ago.
Well, Yosef has been looking far and wide for ways of making Paul of Tarsus not sound stupid, which is like, why would you even bother? But that's how Yosef is. So he found all these arguments that you could vaguely make for Paul not being silly and stupid. But I think it's all a bunch of like people trying to, like, if you think about, okay, I could write a bunch of bullshit, and then if millions of people spend thousands of years trying to figure out how it's not bullshit, somebody will figure out an ingenious way of explaining it. But like, that doesn't mean that the ingenious way of explaining it has any connection to do with what I originally said.
I don't know why like a Christian movement would go Gnostic though. Like it seems like such a weird thing. You know what I mean?
It
What does that have to do with Paul?
Gnostic.
Say again?
It hasn't gone Gnostic. I don't think Paul was a Gnostic.
But you're talking about the whole like the law is dead and we're no longer bound to it and
Well,
what else?
I mean, I do sympathize with Father Stephen when he says that Paul obviously wasn't meaning the stuff that Luther says, because I mean, you probably didn't listen to me reading from Maccabee, but Maccabee, like he explains, like in that entire analogy, the one thing, like if you're explaining it like Luther, the one thing that's supposed to die is the law, and that's the one thing that doesn't die. Like Jesus dies, the church dies, the wife dies, the husband dies, but like the one thing that doesn't die, that he doesn't mention dying, is the law, which is why Christians have spent such a long time trying to understand what Paul was saying. And I think the simplest solution is he just had no idea what he was saying. It's just nonsense. And people don't find that very
But
satisfying.
it's costly nonsense.
Well, okay, yeah, you can signal your allegiance to the Christian tribe by pretending that nonsense makes sense. Yes.
What?
You can nod along with whatever Paul
But
says.
Oh. But
And-
we're talking
and-
about Paul
and be
here.
like, yeah,
we're
it
talking
makes
about Paul
perfect-
writing the nonsense here. Writing the costly nonsense.
What do you mean? It was costly for him to write the nonsense?
Yeah, wasn't it? He's got to send a person there. He's got to write the whole thing. He's got to
in
do it in jail
exchange
or
for
something?
being the leader of his own cult?
I mean, it doesn't sound like it. Didn't he have to write a resume to those other two churches?
Yeah, and like people don't seem to like him. But he does, like, he's the one who's going around collecting the money, right? It's like, come
That's
on.
true.
And he's constantly talking about how he has rights to take some of the money and how he's not a thief and he's not lying. And it's like, come on. Like, I would totally not trust him with the checkbook for the church.
Yeah, but like other people went with him, you know?
Yeah, and all of those people ended up getting into fights with him and leaving, and like, you don't think it's possible that some of the fights were over the fact that Paul was like taking Silas's cut, you know? Sam Titteman says, I interpret everything about Paul horribly. And it's like, well, I mean, I realize it sounds like that, but like the guy just seems really shady.
But like he was taken up to the third heaven, man.
So he claims, just like a shady guy would. I'm guessing Tim doesn't think he's so shady.
I don't have enough.
Donnie,
I don't have enough.
Yeah.
I've obviously read the Bible back several times, but not enough to get into a debate because I don't know Greek. And I have to agree with Father Stephen that there's definitely shenanigans that go on with these translations. That much I do know from what I have.
Donnie made a joke, Shana Tova Tikatev Tichatem, which is what we say on Jewish New Year because it's funny. Don says Yosef was way too nice to Paul and Jacob is mad. Jacob is not mad. I love Yosef for being such a kind-hearted and nice guy. He's trying to redeem even Paul. And it's like, if you can think of a way of redeeming Paul of Tarsus, you're like such a saintly person. You really are. Yosef will be a great guy in the middle between Jacob and Father Stephen Young. Well, Chazi's going to be even worse because Chazi's even worse.
Does Hezi know much like Second Temple stuff or?
No,
Okay.
nobody knows as much as Yosef does. Like Yosef, like he sits around and reads like Oxford series on history for fun.
Joseph's kind of a nerd.
Literally me. What? No.
No, you read a lot. You don't actually read like the academic textbooks,
Yeah.
like the academic series that he reads. I've never seen you read books on those levels.
Yeah.
Hello, Kirk. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to the Father Stephen conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
When's that scheduled, do you know?
It's
a week from now.
Yeah, it's gonna be next Tuesday. In fact, almost exactly a week from right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's scheduled at 9 p.m. because that's when we could get Father Stephen the Young, Chazi, and Yosef together on one stream.
It's only 9 p.m. over there?
It's 9:49 right now.
Wild.
I'm leaving you guys in 10 minutes because my high school friends are waiting.
Uh-huh.
And real life is more important than a bunch of weirdos off the internet who should be like saying their vigil prayers for the circumcision of the Lord.
We are weirdos, but we're your weirdos.
Well, I wouldn't say you belong to me, but you're weird enough that when I run a random stream in the middle of the night, here you are.
Yeah.
Well, it's not midnight where I'm at. It's gonna be midnight soon, but
Yeah, it's going to be the new year.
and
Uh-huh.
I'm excited, and hopefully Father Stephen will see the light.
I doubt very much Father Stephen's going to suddenly see the light. But yeah, at least one thing Yosef said he was mistaken in. Because Chazi, I keep on calling Yosef Chazi. Because Chazi comes on and Yosef doesn't come on very often. Yosef said Paul didn't claim to be a student of Gamliel because it's obviously not true. I'm sorry, but it's like there's no way. And no, it's one of the authentic letters of Paul. He claims to be a student of Gamliel.
Sat at the feet or something like that.
It's
Something
what?
like
Is it Ephesians?
Philippians, I think it is.
Okay.
We discussed it. Where was it? Yeah, Philippians 3:8. Furthermore, I count all these. Oh no, that's where he says things I shall not I shall not repeat. Oh no, it wasn't Gamliel. So in Philippians 3:6, he says, according to zeal, persecuting the church of God, according to the justice that is in the law, conversing without blame. And that's where he like claims to be a Pharisee of Pharisees. And yeah, Yosef was saying he doesn't claim to be a Pharisee. But does he claim to be a student of Gamliel? Oh, claim student.
It's in Acts.
It's in Acts, but nobody believes Acts was right.
Nobody like Croissant or whatever his name is.
Yeah, in Acts 22:3. I guess he's only mentioned in Acts. Where's he?
It would have been towards probably around Acts 20, maybe.
Yeah, Acts 22:3. It says at the feet of Gamliel. But I thought Paul himself claimed to be. Well, he does claim to be a Pharisee.
Dun dun dun.
Which is interesting given how anti-Pharisaic the New Testament is.
Well, part of that is actually like every time the Mishnah and Talmud mention people as Perushim, as Pharisees, it's actually kind of critical language even in the Mishnah. Like it's kind of criticizing those people for excessive whatchamacallit.
Legalism?
Not legalism,
Separation.
yeah, self-piety, yeah. Individual piety as opposed to communal piety. Yeah. Okay, you guys have 5 minutes, and then I'm leaving.
Oh, I grew my hair out, so that's like starting to consume my head.
Good
And
job.
I'm kind of wondering, like, do I stop or not?
By the way, when are you coming back? You have a job.
Yeah, I pushed it back to the 5th. I asked the people because they only accept apprenticeship applications in the month of January. I asked if like I could drop it off and it would enter the tray on January. That didn't work.
Okay.
So yeah, I had to push my flight back, and ask people to pick up my shift and all that jazz.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're applying in Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see
Yeah.
how that goes.
Uh-huh.
What are you applying for in Indiana?
Electrical apprenticeship.
Like an electrician?
Yes, sir.
It's a good trade.
Yes,
Electrifying.
sir.
Was that Megatron?
Is that it's electrifying? That's for sure.
Ta-da-da. If you didn't know that Tim is a father, now you do.
Hey, anyone can make dad jokes nowadays.
Yeah.
Not unless it's a parent.
Ta-da-da.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
That was good. That was good.
Yep.
I mean, if we're discussing our hair, I got a haircut recently.
Oh yeah?
Mazel tov.
Oh, it looks
So-
amazing.
My mom did it, so
Perfect.
free haircut, always fine.
Uh-huh. You see, I spend like 30 minutes every day just getting product in my hair.
Yeah, I don't.
Yep.
Is it about to turn midnight where you are, Kirk?
Yeah, in 4 minutes.
In
Alright.
4 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So we'll wish Kirk a happy new year in 4 minutes, and then I'll end the stream.
Is it?
I'm telling you, man, the future
already,
is great. The future is
are you-
now, actually.
Are you already on the first there, Andrew?
Yes, sir. Been like that for an hour. I gotta remind myself to change the date or something. You
New
won't
Year's-
believe it. They
How's
have
2025
like
so far?
hovercrafts around the street.
Do most Orthodox Jews celebrate secular New Year's?
No. It's not something you celebrate, but
Well, as you know what I mean, like light fireworks, commemorate it.
no, nothing like that. But when I started this this stream, there were I was watching a different Orthodox Jewish New Year stream. Ron Coleman had one going.
That's interesting. So
Because
what do you
obviously
think?
you don't have a party.
Well, yeah. So what do you think is going to be your New Year's resolution? Your essential New Year's resolution, if any?
You talking to me?
I'm talking to Jacob.
I'm not making any New Year's resolutions.
Wow, so boring.
I'll
That's your
try
New
to-
Year's resolution, man. You gotta come up with one. All right, next, Tim.
I'm there with Jacob. I don't make
Oh
any
my
decisions.
gosh, bro, come on. All right,
My New
Kirk, you
Year's
gotta save us.
resolution is
Come on.
not to make
Come
a
on,
New
we're
Year's.
pulling
my
for you,
New-
Kirk.
My New Year's resolution is to study in community college, and hopefully, if I enroll and I get into a good community college with an associate's degree in a couple of years, I'll live a good life, and I'll have some Popeyes tomorrow.
Okay,
So-
you gotta do one that's like achievable in the year. Give me another. Give me another.
I don't know. Acquire better taste.
That's
no,
that's so
not
vague.
achievable.
Acquire better taste. Come on, man. All right, another.
I
Do another
don't
one.
know.
Like number of books read or something. I want to read like 3 novels. I don't know. Give me
Maybe I'll
something.
try and go. Maybe I'll try and go to the gym a little bit more frequently. I mean,
Bench
I-
200 pounds by the end of the year.
I don't know if I'll commit to that, but we'll see.
All right, perfect. Gym once a week or something. We love to see it.
Okay, it's about to be New Year's in 1 minute.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh. I hope you
So-
get your gym session in.
Andrew, you didn't say what you were doing.
Oh, become 250 pounds lean.
There's no way you're gonna gain 80 pounds in 1 year.
Okay. Good luck with that, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll get to 250
Okay,
pounds
Happy
before
New
you do.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Officially.
Woo! Let's go. Did you eat the grapes?
Grapes.
The grapes, man. The 12 grapes. You gotta eat
I've
them.
never heard of this.
Oh my gosh. You guys are gonna have such bad luck. Look
I
at
have
me. My
no idea
aura
what
is
you're-
amazing.
I don't know. It doesn't
Yeah,
look that great
grapes.
to me.
Okay, people. I am ending the stream. It was nice talking to all of you guys.
All right.
Make sure